As Joachim says to Zacharias, "Since you are a priest of God, please understand us and do not be perturbed." "Never," says Zacharias. "On the contrary, your sorrow, which does not go beyond reasonable limits and does not shake your faith, teaches me how to love the Most High. But take heart. Anna, the prophetess, will take care of this flower of David and Aaron. At present, she is the only lily of David's holy issue in the temple, and she will be taken care of as a royal pearl. Although we are approaching the time when the Messiah is to come, and the women belonging to the house of David should be anxious to consecrate their daughters to the temple, because the Messiah will be born of a virgin of David's issue. Yet, because of the general weakening of faith, the places of the virgins in the temple are empty. They are too few, and none of the royal offspring, since Sarah of Elisha left 3 years ago to get married. It is true that there are still 30 years to the appointed time, but, well, let us hope that Mary will be the first of many virgins of David's offspring before the sacred veil. And then, who knows?" Zacharias does not say anything else, but he looks at Mary thoughtfully. Then he resumes, "Also, I will watch over her. I am a priest, and I have power in here. I will make use of it for this angel, and Elizabeth will often come to see her." Just useful to pause for a moment there. So we get this general impression. It's not only our own age that has a weakening of faith, a weakening of the Catholic faith. Back then, people weren't putting their virgins in the temple, those of David's line. They seemed to be unwilling to believe the Messiah would really come. Zacharias makes clear something quite interesting. He says that we are approaching the time when the Messiah is to come. And he says also that it is true there are still 30 years to the appointed time. Well, on the calendar, if one calculates according to Daniel's prophecy given in chapter 9 of the book of Daniel, we see that counting from the day of the decree that goes forth to rebuild Jerusalem, counting the 490 years as it is, we get from there to the time of Jesus. But we know that Jesus is born, as Maria Valtorta's writings say, when Mary is 16. Well, she's 3 at this point, 3 years old. So Jesus is born 13 years later, not 30 years later. So that would seem to suggest the prophecy has failed. It's inaccurate. But if one reads the entire poem of the Man God, one will pick up other useful data. For example, later on when she's older in the temple, before she is betrothed to Joseph, she speaks, I think, to Anna of Phanuel, the one who St. Luke records during the presentation of the baby Jesus in the temple. She speaks to Anna and says, is it possible that the Messiah could come sooner, that God would let him come sooner? And Anna mentions the fact that, there's quite a bit of time to go, but Mary suggests that by prayer it may be possible to advance the time. And in fact, Jesus says, when he's speaking to a Bethlehemite, when he himself, as a grown man, takes 3 of the apostles back to Bethlehem to show them his origins. And this hostile Bethlehemite is not very cooperative, but Jesus suggests, although the prophecy and the time of the prophecy, as the Bethlehemite says, was not yet, Jesus says God could advance the time. And in fact, in the temple prior to that, Mary suggests, well, it could be that the time is advanced, that the prophecy is fulfilled by counting according to lunar years rather than solar years. And that is the indication of how the prophecy is fulfilled earlier than was intended initially. Mary's prayers advanced the prophecy's fulfillment. And so by God changing the years being from solar years to lunar years. Also, there's that moment where it says Zechariah looks at Mary thoughtfully, as if he thinks, well, is she possibly the virgin who will give birth to the Messiah? But then it perhaps is a fleeting thought in his mind. Of course, later on he learns she is, that she is ahead in the future. We also have this affirmation, not only of when the Messiah is to be born, but that he's to be born of a virgin, and that's straight from Isaiah 7:14. Liberal scholars say, well, it's just a young woman. But it's obvious to anybody that the birth of a child to a young woman will not be a sign of anything, since young women give birth to children all the time. This has to be implying that it's a virgin. And there's a book which came out a year or two ago, which goes into that in detail, showing that this really is about a virgin and not just a young woman. I think it's produced by, by Messianic Jews, but I'm not at all sure that's the case. I can't remember its title.